It's episode 13 of the Demo Guys podcast. No fantasy drafts for you guys today. Jason and I think we're fantasy draft out. My fantasy football team not going so well. Had Jaden Reed last night. Thought I had a touchdown. Instead, I got a broken collarbone. Jason, how's your fantasy football season going?
I mean, I'm in your league. I'm at the bottom, so I can't even talk about it.
I'm right there with you. I'm right at the bottom with you. So it's not going to be a good year for me. I don't think there's any hope. But, instead of talking about doing fantasy drafts, fantasy snack drafts, we're going to give you some headlines today. We're going to keep it light, get into some headlines, and then our main topic will be, does paid influencing still make sense for CPG brands? Jason and I got into a little bit of a discussion about this yesterday. Want to bring it on from off air to on air, but we're going to get to our headlines in a second. First, want to shout out our sponsor. Today's episode of the Demo Guys podcast, sponsored by Promo Mash. Not going to do a live read today. I'm just going to go from the gut, go from the heart, and just let you know that Promo Mash is the official CRM of the Demo Guys agency, also brand ambassador consultants and Velocity Goats. Before Promo Mash, when I started Brand Ambassador Consultants version 3.0, I was using Google Sheets. I was trying to create these, drives where I could share photos. I was getting photos texted to me from brand ambassadors. Was trying to put together analytical reports that were very rough around the edges and were sometimes nonsensical. But thanks to Promo Mash, I am able to serve my clients in the best possible fashion, give them the best possible experience, and my brand ambassadors the best possible experience as well. They approve of Promo Mash. So make sure you check out Promo Mash at promomash.com. But Promo Mash is not just for CRM and field marketing. Yuval, the founder of Promo Mash, and I can speak with this, openly because he's transparent about it. You should follow Yuval on LinkedIn. He's very open about this. He is a former brand founder. He, had a brand in CPG and had to shut it down. And he learned from those mistakes, and he created a platform in Promo Mash that could better serve other people in his position. He's created a whole suite of tools that can help CPG founders in various ways, not just managing your field marketing program. He's got a platform that helps with deductions, right? Deductions are a big pain point for a lot of founders out there and a lot of CPG companies in general, big and small, not just founder-led companies. And what and I believe that if done right, if you utilize it properly, the deduction platform for Promo Mash will pay for itself and then some. I've talked to brands that they had so many issues with deductions, they had to hire a person, a new employee to come in, and that's all they did. They tracked and audited deductions, and they filed appeals to deductions. And I talked to one company, they said that it was no small salary to bring that person in, but after a year, they looked at the numbers, and that person more than paid for their salary. And with Promo Mash, you're not going to have to hire someone. You're not going to have to hire a full-time employee and onboard them and go through, getting them health benefits and answer the question of 401k match and things of that nature. You can just outsource it and work with Promo Mash. Promo Mash also has a platform as well that manages, tracks trade spend. A lot of brands out there, they're putting a lot of money towards their trade spend, but when you ask them how much of each dollar invested into what percentage of each dollar generated in revenue, how much of that is what percentage of that is going towards trade spend? And some brands can't answer that question. If you can't answer that question, you need to go to promomash.com, check out all of the tools they have. It can be a game changer for your brand. So that's what I've got to say about Promo Mash. So thank you, Promo Mash, for sponsoring this episode. Right into the first headline, Jason. Yeah, this is something that you definitely wanted us to discuss, and it's a good topic. Is Pepsi making all the wrong moves? It's kind of an interesting situation with Pepsi being very active in the merger and acquisition department. Here's a graphic that's showing you just a summary of some of the moves Pepsi has made. They acquired Poppi, they acquired Siete, they acquired Sabra. They made a very massive strategic investment into Celsius Holdings. Can these moves save Pepsi, Jason?
I don't think so. And the reason why I say that is, I'm just going through history and being in the industry as long as I have. I've seen a lot of this happening, and obviously I know Pepsi bought Izzy because I was part of Izzy when it happened, and I don't see a big presence of Izzy soda anywhere anymore. In fact, if I mention Izzy soda, most people just look at me with a blank stare, which is crazy because when I was with Izzy, it seemed like everybody was talking about Izzy. But that seems to be the case in a lot of these brands, including ones I've been part of. And when they do sell to these big conglomerates, CPG companies, they get lost in the shuffle. They're small, their top line revenue from these brands isn't enough for them to justify putting a big investment into building them up until hopefully organically something happens. And I don't know, you definitely lose a lot of the passion behind those brands when they get those kinds of sales and investments, I've found. And as you've seen even with Coke, with Honest Tea, and some of the, and a lot of brands with these big conglomerates, they just get discontinued, or they just fall apart, or it's I hope that I'm wrong. I really hope that Poppy, and especially Siete Foods, who I'm a big fan of, can carry through and continue building. But from what I've seen, I'm already a little worried about it.
And there's a saying that goes, you cannot kill what you did not create. But I don't think CPG corporations subscribe to that theory and that saying. You touched on it, Jason. A lot of the big corporate conglomerates, they've acquired these better for you brands, these insurgent brands, only to really not do right by them and not take full advantage of the investment that they made. And I wonder if there's resentment towards these insurgent brands coming in and changing the natural order of corporate CPG. And these corporations, they acquire the brands, and quite often they just besmirch everything that made that brand great. And I'm going to use a very vague reference, and most people are going to be like, what's he talking about? But if you're a pro wrestling fan, like I was back in the day, you remember possibly the feud between WWE and WCW, and each company had their own superstars. And Vince McMahon at that time was the founder and chairman of WWE, and he would go after the top free agents from WCW, and these were guys that did very well in another organization. They made Ted Turner a lot of money, and Vince McMahon would pay them handsomely to come over, and then kind of do everything he could in many cases to, run their careers into the ground, try to damage their legacies, because their legacy wasn't built in his machine, the WWE machine. And I feel like some of that exists when you look at a Coke and a Pepsi. They go out, they acquire these brands because these brands are competition. They're cutting into their market share. And rather than look at it from a positive perspective, hey, we've got this awesome new brand that came from outside our umbrella, and now we're going to take our trucks and our factories and all of our resources and just turn this brand into an even bigger juggernaut. And we rarely see that. I'd be hard pressed to tell you of a better for you brand that was acquired by, and Jason, you might disagree with me, and there could be a good example of this. And if you have a comment out there, but name for me a brand, better for you brand, that was acquired by a massive corporate CPG conglomerate, and that brand, that better for you brand, became bigger and better. You were with Perfect Bar. How do you feel Perfect Bar, has been under new ownership?
And I don't want to, that's.
I hate to put you on the spot.
Maybe I'm still very close with a lot of the family members there, but it's it definitely feels different to me, and I know I could speak from a more data-driven side of it, and I'm not going to, because that's not, I can't really do that. But here's the deal. We doubled our growth year over year into 2019. I don't think that's happened since, and that's when we sold. So I'm pretty sure it's not even close to that. And, I've seen them lose some pretty valuable PODs. So I just assume that it's one of those things. They're always going to have a spot now because they created the category, but it's pretty ripe right now for innovation. And you see a lot of brands coming into that space because they know it's once those acquisitions happen, it's kind of like opening a wound. And now all the prey is coming in and saying, all right, well, guess what? If you're going to sell to these companies that don't really care about where you are on the shelf, or pretty much you're the bottom of their portfolio at this point, we're gonna innovate. We're gonna come in. We're gonna try to take that share, and we're gonna dominate it. And you're starting to see that. I'm not gonna mention any brands, but we all know who they are. So,
and on one hand, when these better for you brands that have founders that have made so many sacrifices, late nights, all the travel, time away from the family, when they make these exits, on one hand, I'm very happy for them. Yeah. On the other hand, it's just, I wish we would see a few of these better for you companies just stay independent. When I was with Super Coffee, Jim DeSico, the CEO of the company at the time, the oldest brother of the DeSicos, we had a retreat. And this is going back 6 years ago in the Carlisle area. And, he got us really pumped up. He got me especially pumped up. He was talking about some of the, rumors of major companies coming after Super Coffee, trying to acquire Super Coffee at that time. And I'll never forget the quote because it's something I think about quite often. He brought up the name of the company. I'm not going to bring it up here. He goes, forget so and such. Why can't we one day buy such and such company? And, that really kind of got my head turning. It's something I think about. And I feel like some of these companies out there, if they just had the stamina, if they could just keep going and push through, they could be the new Coke. They could be the next Pepsi. They could be the next Frito-Lay. But when you sell, you just cut your legs out from under you. And we need some of these independent companies to stay the course and continue to grow and start to break up the corporate control of our food supply, which leads us to our next topic, Jason. Our next headline: will a split save Kraft Heinz? And just to kind of show you here's a graphic we've got about highlighting the split. Kraft Heinz announced this over a week ago. They are intending to split their company up. And this graphic here will show you how the split's going to work. They're going to create one company where it's sauces, and then you're going to look at the North American Grocery Co., which will include Oscar Mayer, Kraft Singles, and Lunchables. This is a company that is a major corporate conglomerate, but has been struggling mightily. And, I have my theory as to why it's struggling mightily. But, Jason, I want to get your thoughts on that split. Is, Kraft Heinz, their sales have been sagging. They were talking about going out and making strategic acquisitions. We really haven't seen that. Now they're talking about splitting the company up into two. Can the split save Kraft Heinz?
The split could save Kraft Heinz only if the movement that's happening right now was to completely dissipate and everyone just went back to eating whatever they thought was available and they didn't care about the ingredients. And that's just not going to happen. We have an educated younger generation coming up who are looking at labels a lot more frequently and paying attention to what they're eating. And there's so much more knowledge out there thanks to social media that people are being a lot more selective. And I'm telling you right now, I know those brands well. And I don't look at those products when I go to the grocery store. I shun them. I am not a fan of Velveeta. I don't know what it is. I don't even think it's food. It's just those things are destined to disappear in the new world, I should say, in the new CPG economy. And you know what? Don't let that door hit you. It's been kind of a disaster for our health in America, and it's time for a change. So I'm sad for the people who work for those companies because I know it's going to be a long journey to the bottom. But I also am grateful because now we have brands coming on that I do believe, Sam, can get to that level where they can start saying. And it kind of happened with Celestial Hain back in the day. And I always thought to myself, why don't more companies do this? Like these big, better for you CPG brands like an Olipop in today's world and Lesser Evil and stuff. Why don't they just collaborate and say, look, we're going to take all the big boys down. We've got the favor. We've got the clientele coming in and we're barely even big enough in household penetration yet to even talk to Coke or Pepsi. Yet our sales are far beyond their growth, right? So I know I'm just talking in circles here, but at the end of the day, I truly believe that we're into a shift now, and it's going to be really hard to stop it.
Well, the Kraft Heinz struggles should be a beacon of light to a lot of better for you brands out there that, hey, we're having an impact. Better for you brand founders, you're having an impact. Kraft Heinz is struggling because you're making products the better way. And there's more and more people that are becoming educated about what they're putting into their bodies. And Kraft Heinz has been very slow to pivot from using horrible ingredients. And now we have someone in government, and I'm not trying to get political, but RFK Jr. he's been very outspoken. And even before he was part of the current administration, he made a living suing companies that were harming the environment, putting harmful ingredients in food and harming people. And he's been very vocal about what he wants to set out to do. And Kraft Heinz, when you're still using corn syrup and high fructose corn syrup and things of ingredients of those nature, it's and you're slow to pivot from that. It's going to be a huge problem going forward unless you get ahead of the issue. And I don't think Kraft Heinz has gotten ahead of the issue. And it's interesting. We asked that question: will a split save Kraft Heinz? And you've got Warren Buffett saying no. He's saying he does not. Warren Buffett is the guy, head of Berkshire Hathaway, that put these, the conglomerate together back in 2015. And Kraft Heinz, they announced the split, and then shares fall 7%. And I think Warren Buffett knows a thing or two about businesses and the marketplace. So, I don't know why Kraft Heinz didn't consult with him before they made this decision, because you're splitting, you're splitting all of your bad products into two different categories. That's not the answer to save your company. So that's one thing I want to throw in there. Next headline, Jason, Nutrabolt has, a big player in the energy space, the very lucrative energy space. They are increasing their stake, and they have made an additional investment in Bloom Nutrition. Bloom Nutrition's been around since 2019. I became familiar with them through some of their supplements that they had on the shelf, but in more recent times, they've come out with a ready-to-drink energy line, and I've tried it, and the ingredients are pretty good, and it tastes tremendous. So not a surprise here that Nutrabolt would get further involved with Bloom Nutrition. The investment stake is now reported to be around 210 million. It's hard to find confirmation whether or not Nutrabolt now has a majority interest in Bloom, but there are rumors that with this additional investment, Nutrabolt now will have a majority stake. And it goes to something we discussed, last week, Jason. We talked about the energy category, one of the biggest categories in all of CPG. And it's just proliferated with a lot of options that have harmful ingredients. And I'm not saying Bloom's ready to drink energy drink is perfection when it comes to ingredients, but when you compare what's out there, especially you compare it to what the Nutrabolt's core line of energy products, Bloom Nutrition is indeed a big pivot for them and a step in the right direction. So any thoughts on that?
I'm gonna let you have that one. I'm just not a big energy drink drinker, I should say. It's one of those things, like, I just subscribe to not destroying your adrenal glands altogether, but it's if it's better for you, this is what I'll say. I live across the street from a Wegmans, and I watch the sets like an eagle. That's just who I am. Like, I always pay attention to who's new, who's going out.
Yep.
And I've seen that set turn over a lot recently. I'm not going to mention any brands, but Bloom's new to it, and it sticks out. The cans really pop. Like, I walk by it and I see it first and foremost, and they're on the top shelf. So that's a lot to say. So I do love the packaging. The branding looks good. The ingredients do look pretty clean overall, and I do think it's got legs. It's one of those things. I feel like every day there's a new energy drink on the market, and every time I go on LinkedIn, there's 50 new energy drinks. So it's one of those things. I feel like that category is getting so saturated right now. Liquid Death just got into it. Who's going to win it? I don't know. Celsius is still driving a lot, I'm sure, with Alani Nu too. So that's my 2 cents. I don't see it stopping. People love their energy drinks. It's just, who's going to win it? And is it just a temporary win because the next one's going to come along and win? That's what seems to be happening over and over again.
And the question I have is, how soon will we see consolidation in the category? Will it be a year from now, 2 years from now? Because you touched on it. It's just an incredibly saturated category right now. and there can only be a few winners. Not every brand can win, and a lot of them are in startup mode. They're able to spend right now, but eventually that money will run out. And when it does run out, if they don't have enough market share, the investors in the investment community, they will stop funding the existence of those companies. So I do think in the next couple of years, we're going to see a lot of merger and acquisitions in the energy space, and we'll see some brands just fall by the wayside completely because there's only so many brands that that can be absorbed into another company. So next here, we're going to go into our main topic. And this is a conversation. Jason and I basically had our own podcast off the air yesterday at Kimberton Whole Foods when we were making some plans for the Demo Guys agency. But, the question is, and the topic is, does paid influencers still make sense for CPG brands? Jason, you had a lot of opinions yesterday. I wanted to get those kind of on the air and in front of our listening audience of CPG founders.
Wow. I mean, this is opening up a can of worms for me just because I've been in this industry a long time and I've seen when influencers did actually work. It was great. But the problem I've seen is now they have to disclose that they're getting paid for these influential, whatever they're doing, posts, activations and things like that. They have to be honest. And I'm sorry, when I know someone's getting paid to sell something, I lose a lot of interest in it. It's just like I see these celebrities pushing these products, which I can't stand a lot of times because they're usually not good for you, on television and commercials. And I'm thinking to myself, man, they're not consuming it. And that's how I feel now. Like, is the influencer really consuming it? Is it something they really care about, or are they just getting a paycheck? So that's where my 2 cents come in. And I've heard that from many, many, many people. So that's my thoughts. I'm not saying the influencers are not doing well. I'm not saying that they're that there's not some good ones out there. I'm just saying from what I've seen, it's also really hard to track the return on investment from that. There's no way to really turn it to sales through the register. And maybe you can do it a little easier on TikTok and things like that when you can sell on TikTok. But it still, at the end of the day, you might get a flash and you might get a million likes and you might sell some product on TikTok. But then somebody else comes in with another influencer and then you're just forgotten about. Whereas like when you win in retail and you win space in retail, people are going to keep returning and going past that product over and over again. So that's what I've got to say.
And you and I talk to founders all the time. And I feel like it fits into two categories for me. A category of founders that have gone through that system of working with influencers. They've already run the gamut. They've already been through the process and they don't have very many positive things to say about the ROI. And then you have the other group, the founders that really haven't invested yet in digital influencers and they're thinking about it and they ask us for advice. And quite often I tell them, hey, look, I'm not an expert on influencing, but I've talked to other founders and I've worked inside of brands and I've never heard anything positive when it came to the ROI. And, if you're a founder out there and you have a different experience, positive experience, we'd love to hear from you. If you're watching live, drop a comment here on LinkedIn or, send us an email, send Jason and I an email and let us know because we want to, hear all sides to it. And some people, Jason, they might say that like you and I are biased, that we would say, hey, founders out there, you really want to curtail your investment in digital influencers. And really where you want to be is field influencing, AKA sampling demos. And some people might say that you and I are biased towards that. We both own, demo agencies. But here's the thing, Jason, with your background, you've been in the industry longer than I have. You've not just been a field marketer. You've served different roles in this industry. You've worked on the sales side. You've worked as a broker. You've even worked on a grocery side. So you've seen it from all angles. And your belief to me in the power of demos and the benefits is very organic. It's not a biased view. It took years of trial and error until you got to that point. What were some of the seminal moments or the key learnings that, with all the different ways to market a brand and build a brand, what led you to the such a strong belief that demos were the way to go?
The pandemic. It completely changed everything that I learned so much from 2020 to 2023 working, not doing demos as much, right? I had to pull back. Demos pretty much went away and I had to learn a lot more about shopper marketing and what other tools I had in my chest to really try to create trial and awareness, especially for smaller emerging brands. And here I am. My first position after Perfect Bar, Perfect Snacks was with a tin fish company called Safe Catch. And, I was able to add 14,000 points of distribution in 9 months. Like I know how to attack. I know how to talk to category manager. Like I know how to talk to people in stores. I can get people to buy stuff. It's just what I can do. The problem is they had me investing in all these programs for shopper marketing. Like I'm just going to throw some out there. With Acme and Albertson Safeway and just some of the other like Giant Ahold, things like that, like gas rewards, all these things, and big spends. Yeah. And I'm not seeing anything coming back after sure, we sold a decent amount of product, maybe more. We definitely got a lift from it, but then you're watching the data, and if you're not tracking your trade like PromoMash does, first and foremost, you're going to lose. But what I was seeing is this bump, and then right back to the plateau, and really no baseline growth at all. And the one thing I've always, and this is what I love about PromoMash too, and I'm going to call out PromoMash again, is they offer an addition to the platform called Crisp. With demos, you can actually track your baseline from the start. And consistently watch the growth on your baseline sales continue up. So it's not a biased view. It's just a data-driven view. It's just most of these data analysts are going to sell you on all these other programs because nobody wants to have to go out to the store and actually sell your product. They don't want to have to sacrifice their weekends. They don't want to have to sacrifice their own time. So then you have to hire brand ambassadors and things to do that, which are probably the most important, influential person in your brand at that time. Why? Because they're interacting with hundreds of people every day in the store, and it's your brand that they're representing. And those are the people that get no attention at all and no love, and they're paid $25, $30 an hour. And at the end of the day, when the company gets to this growth thing, they're gone. And that's why I created Velocity Goats, and that's why I'm doing the Demo Guys agency with you. I do not need to prove anything anymore. I don't need to come in here and try to make a ton of money. That is not the goal. I want to help these small brands that spend all this money on all these other things that don't drive trial and awareness, and just show them, look, it's a real simple strategy. It's not easy to execute, but when you execute it at a high level, there's absolutely nothing that's going to build your top line growth and your awareness and your velocities and start generating revenue than demos. And if you can't invest in that and you have a very small budget, start really small, start local, start with 5 stores. It doesn't matter, because when you start going deeper, it gets a lot easier to go wider. Sorry, Sam.
No problem. and to our point here that we're not biased, I don't think I'm revealing anything that's going to be shocking to people, but you and I, we've worked in the industry long enough. You get employee shares of companies. I have a vested interest in these companies doing well and hitting their marks, so that some of these stock options that I've, some of them that are fully vested now, some of them pay off. And for me, as a big believer as I am in demos, if a brand that I have stock options in has found, a new way to grow their brand, and whether it be shopper marketing, digital marketing, if that's what's driving growth, I'm all for it. Yeah, absolutely. I want my investments to pay off. We have a lot of people that listen to us. They may just be sales managers, but still have stock options too. A lot of people in our industry, that's how compensation works, is through stock options in addition to salary. So, I am open to anything and everything that could generate income as a shareholder. But it's getting crazier and crazier in terms of the ability to grow a brand inside of a store. And influencing was very big during the pandemic. It was very big, but that was when people were stuck in their homes and were doom scrolling and were on their phones constantly. And once everything opened up, then we saw the power of the influencer start to fade away. And I think there's only a handful of true influencers in CPG. And those are the ones that, if I was going to recommend a brand work with, those are the ones that you really do want to work with. There might be only 4 or 5 of them that really can truly have an impact, but they're not going to be cheap. And the other thing that I have concerns about, sometimes these influencers, Jason, they contradict themselves at times. And, you know, once they're out of contract with a brand, there's nothing to stop them from now promoting a competing brand. Yeah. So the authenticity it doesn't exist there. And I just, you know, I believe demos are the way to go. Brands, I'm telling you, you know, you want to hit all these different categories because you want to diversify your marketing plan. Take a look at it. I think whatever your demo spend is, you should double down on that and pull from some other buckets. But that's just my 2 cents there. Some people can say we're biased, but I think we've laid out a good argument here of what led us to believe that demos are the best way to go in CPG. But that just about does it for this episode, Jason. Good show here. Lots of good headlines. If you want to connect with us, please do so. You know, the information is out there, right there at the bottom of the ticker. If you want to know when the next show is, we're targeting next Friday. I'm going to talk to Jason, see if we can do it at noon next Friday. But regardless of that, the best way to follow the show and find out when we're going to go live is to go to YouTube and go to the Brand Ambassador Consultants YouTube channel at BA Consultants. Give us a like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. And anytime we schedule a live show, you'll know about that ahead of time. And once we go live, you'll also get a notification as well. But for the Demo Guys podcast, I'm Sam Kaplan. He's Jason Smith. We'll see you behind the demo table.
Thanks, everyone.